Welcome to the Heal Black Joy podcast presents Soul Food and War. I'm Lola Troy, the host and curator of Heal Black Joy, the learning platform for our communities to heal our Black joy with tangible and attainable programs for the mind, body, soul, relationships, and businesses. And in today's conversation, we are going to be talking about being bold, be brave, be confident in life. I have a very, very special guest, you guys. Like, this has been probably my favorite interview that I'm probably going to do so far in my career. Um, some of you may know, this is my father. Um, how are you?
I'm fine.
I'm going to give him a formal introduction, but he is like my favorite guy in the world. So, just to give you a little bit of history for those of you who don't know my father, Mr. Harold Jean Troy Sr., a community leader, retired educator, Grammy-nominated songwriter, devoted husband, father, grandfather, and just recently, great-grandfather. He's a proud graduate of Whiteville Negro Central High School. He's a graduate of St. Paul's College in Lawrenceville, Virginia for his undergraduate degree, and a graduate of North Carolina Central University with his master's in education. He retired after teaching 33 years in this Columbus County area, first at East Arcadia Elementary, and then in the Whiteville City Schools System at Central Middle School. While at both schools, he coached girls and boys basketball teams for 31 years. He also volunteered many years afterwards at Central Middle School. He is no stranger to community involvement or development on the local and state levels. He has fought for civil and human rights his entire adult life. He served as facilitator of activities for the court case Wade and others versus Ward, and others versus Columbus County, providing voting districts to assure the possibility of electing two minorities for Columbus County Commissioners 1990 through 1991. In 2005, he presented at several statewide conferences on the Voting Rights Act, as well as to the Congressional Committee at a hearing for the reauthorization of the 2006 Civil Rights Voting Act. He co-founded and was a co-owner of a weekly newspaper that served Bladen, Brunswick, Columbus, and Robeson counties 1972 through 1976, and it was called the Afro Chronicle. He is a recipient of so many community service awards for his dedicated community service: Henry E. Fry Trailblazer Award, the North Carolina Legislative Black Caucus Foundation in 2000, Tri-County Coach of the Year 2011, the Brunswick County NAACP Community Service Award. It goes on and on and on, you guys. He served on several boards. Whiteville City Council. He was a Whiteville City Councilman from 1995 to 2019. He was the first Black to be on the UNCW Trustee Board from 1973 to 1983. League of Municipalities, Columbus County Community Health Services Boards, and many, many more. He's also a prostate cancer survivor. He's conducted programs throughout Southeastern North Carolina and for the North Carolina Black elected officials. He has been a guest speaker for various occasions all over the state of North Carolina, including for civil rights, voting, community involvement, politics, fatherhood, music, especially songwriting. So we're going to get into the songwriting bit because I think that's important. He is the founder and owner of Sweet Andy Publishing Company and songwriter with a Grammy-nominated song, Jesus, I Love Calling Your Name, recorded by the international gospel artist Shirley Caesar, and about 70 other groups or individuals today that have re-recorded this song. As a long-standing member of the church, he grew up in Friendship Missionary Baptist Church, where he served as a deacon and a choir member. In the latter years, he decided to support his daughter in her ministry and joined church Victory in Jesus Ministries, where he's a deacon, a Sunday school teacher, and co-facilitator of married couples ministry. Now, getting to the good, juicy stuff. His greatest accomplishment, in his opinion, would be his relationship with his devoted wife of 58 years, my mother, none other, Miss Evelyn Troy, his children, Denise, Jean, Tracy, and myself, Lola, his favorite grandchildren, Demetrius and Lauren, and the newest addition to our Troy family, his first great grandson, Asen. So we're super excited about that. So I know I tried to like give him this super duper introduction, but Dad has done so much in his 80, can I tell? 83 years of living. I know how many years you've been alive. I just didn't know if you wanted me to tell him or not.
I'm not ashamed. I'm thankful for it.
I know that's right. So, Dad, let's get into it. Let's get into it. Being bold, being brave, being confident is this season's theme. And I named it this season's theme because my personal coach, she was bold, she was brave, and she was confident, but we lost her with a bout with cancer in July. So I wanted to interview you for a while now because considering the climate that we're currently in our hometown, I wanted to get your thoughts on being bold, being brave, and being confident in life. I know you guys, I ran through his his intro, but my father has accomplished so much in his lifetime. He's what I consider to be a Renaissance man. Where do you think your bravery and your confidence came from?
My daddy was a very bold individual during the times when blacks were restricted from doing many things that others were allowed to do in society. But he always kept his dignity. He was always very bold about keeping his dignity. I remember a time when my father was 4 feet 11 inches tall. And I remember the time we were going downtown to shop for groceries, and my daddy had my brother on one side with his hand in his hand, and me on the other side, hand in hand. We walked past this group of white men who was sitting over at a taxi cab stand.
Okay.
And they said, "Hey, shorty." My daddy gripped our hands real tight, walked over to this group and looked the speaker in the face and said, "My name is James P. Troy. If you can't call me James P. Troy, Professor Troy, or James, don't call me a damn thing."
Ooh.
4 feet 11 inches tall, but he was a giant.
I know that's right.
And those things make an impression on you, even though you don't know it until you get older.
Yeah.
But that kind of boldness. Now, I don't lay any claim to being brave. I lay claim to being curious and possibly confident, but all the times you're not confident when you thrust yourself into situations that you feel like you can aid someone in or some group in. You don't feel totally, completely brave.
Okay.
But you feel confident, and you move towards the mark with that confidence, and that confidence will get you there.
Okay. I like that. I think so. It's not necessarily about being brave. It's more so about being confident.
Sometimes it's about being scared, but still doing
Ooh, that's a bar right there, Daddy.
But still going ahead with your mission.
That's a bar. Meaning that you still just press forward. You know you got something to do, and sometimes you have to do it scared.
You have to do it scared, yes.
Would you think that there's some bravery in that?
Possibly.
It has to be, because I mean, you don't know what you're going to encounter when you decide that you're going to move, right?
No.
But you just move. You do it.
You assess what you're trying to conquer is to the limit that you can, but you're never sure of exactly what you're going to face when you get involved into a situation.
Right. So your father was that for you. He was your inspiration.
He was my inspiration with his 4 foot 11 self.
He had the biggest personality, though.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, he had a big personality.
And he loved his 2 boys, Jim and Harold.
Yep, absolutely. I love that.
Wife.
And his wife, Leola, who I am also named after. Okay, so let me ask you this. Out of all of the things that you accomplished in your 83 years, what, besides the family, because you are a family man, and I know that you, the things that you did, of course, were to always be of some benefit to us and to teach us morals and values and those things, and to be an example as a husband and as a father. But out of those things that I mentioned, what would you say was one of your greatest accomplishments besides family?
As we speak, there's a meeting going on that is aimed at getting some kind of justice for a situation that happened with our sheriff here in Columbus County. 2 years ago, he made a telephone call to a sheriff who was temporarily about the sheriff's position in 2008, was being argued, and he made a call to the sheriff who was serving temporarily, which was racist, mean-spirited, and I can't think of another word right now to it was egregious.
Well, we're going to get into that. We're going to get into that conversation because I think the climate that we're in right now, we're going to talk about it. But
the willingness to face that kind of degradation coming from someone who feels superior to you is one of the greatest things that I feel that I served somewhat in that position many years ago, and throughout my life, I've always attacked things that were wrong, especially racially.
Yeah. And you did that, you know, from the standpoint of you being a city councilman. You did that as a community leader. Just one of the things that I mentioned earlier was the Voting Rights Act, and making sure and ensuring during the court case Ward and others versus Columbus County, as a facilitator, this was a case that happened in our county, very similar to what's going on now, just some real racial tension that's going on now. You providing voting districts to assure the possibility of electing 2 minorities for our Columbus County commissioner. And that was done 1990 through 1991. You and other gentlemen that were a part of the community. And a lot of those men, are any of the rest of those men alive?
No, all of them are dead now.
Except for you?
Except for me, and except for me.
Wow. And you guys came together and said that it was unfair because of the districting that was going on in the county, that there were not minorities that were representing the area in our county. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So you've always been on the hem of fighting for equality, for the underdog, for people that have been disenfranchised. What made you get into, I know you did that from a community standpoint, but what made you decide to go and run for office for city councilman?
I was bombarded by the wishes of people who were in the community saying that I should run for the second seat. That we had one seat that was filled with an African American by the name of Andy Anderson, young, upcoming, brilliant guy who was also a sort of a freedom fighter.
Okay.
And there came a possibility of another Black person on city council, and the community chose me, and I ran for the office and won.
And you ran for the office and won. And you were a city councilman for how many years? 21 or 2?
22.
22 years. That's right. 22 years. Because we just did this. We just had a birthday party for my dad in August. And I did Who Knows Harold Troy the Best. And I kind of did a multiple choice question. And that was one of the questions that, he was a city councilman for 22 years. So let me ask you this. Being a city councilman, you guys, you traveled to the municipalities. What was that meeting that you would always go to?
The
The state
League of
municipal, the
Cities.
League of Cities. Where in the League of Cities, what do they do there? Like, you basically meet with other city councilmen, aldermen, people that are a part of, that's from all over the country, all over the state, or is it a statewide thing, or is it a countrywide thing?
It's a countrywide thing, and you mix with people, and you get best practices as to how to run your city, and programs and focuses that they're doing in their cities that have been successful in being the best service you can to your constituents. And of course, it chose cities that were outstanding, and it chose people who were outstanding. And that was part of the conference that we used to have every year.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's get into this Afro Chronicle, because I wanted to talk about this. We talked about this in his birthday party, you guys. So my dad co-owned and co-founded a paper. Who was the other person that co-owned it and co-founded it with you?
Oscar Blank, Sam Freeman, and Fairleigh Newton.
Mr. Fig Newton.
Mr. Fig Newton.
Right. We call him Mr. Fig. So these guys, you guys, what prompted you to start a paper?
Well, we thought that the paper was not doing us justice. The paper that was in vogue at the time was not doing us justice. So we decided to speak for ourselves in our own way, in our own paper.
So when you say doing us well, you mean in blacks?
I mean black people, yeah.
Yeah. So you wanted to see some representation in paper, in media.
I wanted to see articles that were not always negative, the positive activities and things that go on in black communities were hardly ever reported in the other paper. And it was always some situation where the person who was being reported on had broken the law or something of that nature, always shown in a bad light.
Right.
And at the same time, you wanted to have somewhere you could vent your frustrations. You know, every newspaper has an editorial page.
Right.
And the editorial page is a place you would write and you would hardly get any answer, get anybody to run your article about what was going on in your community. There was no coverage of the black community per se.
In these counties.
In this county.
Okay. And that was Bladen, Brunswick, Columbus, and Robinson County, right?
Yes.
Okay. So did you know that that's kind of why I started Hill Black Joy?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
That is so crazy. I see the parallel in it. So the reason why I started Hill Black Joy is because, unlike the paper, what I was seeing in today's times in social media was the polarization of our trauma. It was always somebody being killed, somebody being shot. And I wanted to be a part of the solution, not to be a part of the problem. So I wanted to create content that spoke to our joy instead of speaking to our trauma. Okay. So very similarly, we had the same kind of inspiration. Isn't that funny? It is. And ironic?
It's interesting, even to say the least.
I know. So that's kind of cool that I followed in your footsteps in that manner.
You followed my footsteps in a whole lot of manners. I'm proud of you for it.
I got your temperament for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
And my writing ability I got from you.
Thank you.
Well, I can't say that. My organization I got from Mother.
Yeah.
But my writing I definitely got from you.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's get into the creative side of you. Not only did you write poetry, you taught so many different classes. I mean, you taught English, you taught social studies. What was your favorite thing to teach? I never asked you that.
Social studies.
Really?
Yeah.
Because why?
Of mankind, people, and it deals with people.
Okay, so let me ask you this: with that being said, how do you feel about them not putting in the history of Blacks in the light that we learned it? Like we were going to school, how we were taught. I mean, you taught us outside of school about Black history, but the history, Black history that was taught in school when we were growing up was, of course, we talked about Martin Luther King, we talked about Rosa Parks, and that was about it. They don't really talk about race relations. They don't really talk about us being kings and queens, prior to slavery. They only want to talk from the perspective of from slavery or post-slavery.
Well, it's almost impossible to write and talk about something enough for people to learn enough about it. Very sadly, that occurred in our community at the same time, that we didn't think of our history to search it deeply and masterfully so that we could share it with others, the coming generation. And therefore, it was not taught. It was not taught because there were not enough people in local areas who knew enough about it, and there was no concern about it at the level that they made decisions. And so therefore, that's one of the reasons we started the paper, so that we could get our voice firsthand to the general public.
And it was received well, I would say.
It was received pretty well. You had the naysayers.
Yeah.
You had the people who felt that you were out of your element and that you shouldn't be. There was no need for a Black unquote newspaper.
Right.
But we saw the need for it, and we pressed on towards the mark.
I think that there's bravery in that too, because a lot of times when you're starting stuff, especially like when I started Heal Black Joy, it's not that I didn't have any naysayers. I think the naysayer for me was myself, like self-sabotage. Like I'm starting something, I don't really know what it's going to end up being. It kind of grew legs and turned into a show and turned into some other things, podcasts, and so on. And speaking, just things that I hadn't done a whole lot of, but I think there's bravery in going in to start something, even when you have those naysayers, even if it's the naysayer inside of you. I think there's some bravery in that because you don't know what the outcome of it's going to be. You just did it because you felt there was a need for us to have a voice.
That might have been very true, the newspaper, that we were brave in dealing with the newspaper because we didn't know how limited we were in terms of having resources when we started. We just dove headlong into it, and we were determined that whatever the outcome was going to be a good outcome, and we would continue to press forward, and not be deterred by fear. So I guess you would call that brave, but I still lay no claim to personal bravery myself.
Okay. Well, I mean, we can all say that, but you can decide that you're not brave, but I consider that extremely brave. So let's jump into this climate that we're in our county. I think that this is such a timely interview, you guys, because my dad has always been a person that, was at the helm of fighting for equality and fighting racial issues in my hometown, in our county, in the area that we live. We are currently on the news right now. It's become national, if not international news all over, where, like my dad was saying, there is a sheriff here that there was a tape that happened 2 years ago where he was speaking to another person, I guess, in the department. And he said some really disparaging, racially motivated, disrespectful, and articulated it, very disrespectfully towards Blacks that worked inside of the department. What are your thoughts when it comes to what's going on right now?
Well, it's just by the good graces of the person who saved the tape and tried to share it with everybody he could, even though he's running for sheriff as we speak, some people think it was just political, that he's just going all out trying to win. But he's righting a wrong while he's doing it, so we'd have to settle for that. He's righting a wrong that was an egregious wrong, as I said before, and as things progress, we find out many things. We knew things about the sheriff before these statements came to light, but we did not know it to be true, exactly true. And he, of course, would deny what he was asked about that was questionable. His actions that were questionable, if he would question about him, he would not tell the truth about it, and he's still not telling the truth.
So what I will say is, I don't want to get into the meat of what was said. It's all over the news. If you research Columbus County Sheriff in North Carolina, you can go to any articles in the Huffington Post. A lot of people have picked up the article, but I just thought this was a timely interview to have this conversation with you, considering you've been at that helm of fighting for disenfranchised people, and then those racially motivated things that have happened in our county. Let me ask you a question, because we were talking about this the other day. When passing the baton, because you're 83, like you get the chance to sit down, right? You fought a good fight, right? When you're passing the baton to the next generation, we talked about this. There's been some issues with passing the baton on from what we consider the OG leaders. And I'm not just talking about in Columbus County, I'm talking about across the United States. There's been this really strong disconnect with what we call the OG leaders and those people that are trying to fight for equality now. Sometimes the younger leaders are not as receptive as they could be when it comes to what you guys, laid out before us. And then sometimes I think the OGs are a little bit stubborn, if you will, when it comes to passing the baton up. What do you think about that?
Well, it's the age of question, youth versus age, that occurs in just about any walk of life that you look at. If you're talking about politics, if you're talking about history and politics and all the things that play into that, it's always been my feeling that I've always tried to encourage younger people, and it's always been my feeling that we are left with the responsibility, the older people are left with the responsibility of bringing people along, no matter what kind of sacrifices we have to make to do that.
They say he was suspended.
I was in the middle of talking about the sheriff being suspended, and that has to do with some of the organizations, such as I said, Curtis Hill, who is the head of the NAACP, and the NAACP in the state level has become involved, and the Sheriff's Association and the DA have called for his suspension.
Go ahead.
Ms. Gloria Smith, who was an organizer who fought the case, who led her name to the case that had to do with the sheriff when he first ran for office some years ago. And Franklin Thurman, I meant to call his name, but he is the head of the Democratic Party, and they're fighting this to the hilt. They're not sticking their heads in a hole and hiding. They're fighting the situation, causing things to happen, putting pressure on the bodies that can make a change in this, and they're fighting very heartily. And I have to salute them, because they're fighting the good fight that we used to have to fight.
Yeah. So you were getting ready to say the difference in what the NAACP wants and what now?
And NAACP and the black people who are supporting the NAACP and just black people in general, what they want is him to resign.
Yeah.
So this is a forward step in getting rid of such people who serve, who think they can serve just one group of people, and and
not serve everybody.
Everybody else will be satisfied.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't want to stay on that too long because there's so much more that I want to discuss with you besides what's going on in Columbus County. You fought a good fight in Columbus County. So I want to get to some of the good stuff. So you have a Grammy nominated song. I remember when it came out. I remember when we sang. Do you remember when we went to Shirley Caesar's house and sang the song for her?
Yeah, I remember. It was raining. It was in April.
It was in April.
Yeah.
And I was in the 4th grade when we went to go sing the song.
1983, I believe it was.
It was 1983. I think I was in the 4th grade, and Tracy and I were the background singers, and you sang it for her. And she was getting ready to go to an award show.
She was ready to go to Nashville to record.
She was going somewhere, and she was so excited about the song. She wanted us to ride with her
to the
airport, and she wanted us to continue singing the song to her.
Yeah.
Then her flight got canceled, and we ended up going back to her house to sing Jesus again for her. And
you all sang it before she even had a chance to even listen to it.
Right. And then I remember when it came out. I remember I was at Daddy T's house, my granddaddy, his father, and I remember on his TV, the album said, Jesus, I Love Calling Your Name. So it was not just a single, but it was also the name of the album.
Yes.
And you weren't home and you did not know that. You didn't know. We told you.
We heard it on the way home. The first day it was played on WNC and WVOE.
I don't know if I ever told you this, but Daddy T was so happy because he got to see you accomplish you doing that song for her. And to see that come across the screen, it was like a proud father moment. And I was there with him when he saw that.
He was the best.
Yeah, he was the best. He was so super proud of you. And you put these children through college on that, didn't you?
Yeah, it was
lucrative.
I guess I won't say lucrative.
No, it wasn't. I mean,
it satisfied a need.
It satisfied a need, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. It satisfied a need, and it's one of those things that keeps on giving. It's the joy that keeps on giving, right?
Yeah.
I know. It keeps on giving. If you know anything about songwriting,
go ahead. Because once you copyright your song, it's yours for life.
It's yours for life.
And even after life, you can give it off to your children, publishing it.
Exactly. Daddy has always taught me, you write it, you copyright your song. So any artist out there that is a writer, that is a producer, that is a singer, but you want to write, because writing that writing and you copyright that song or whatever your art is, you want to make sure that it's trademarked or copywritten. You want to make sure that it is in that book so that you can get compensated for your art.
Right.
Absolutely. So let me ask you a question. How many songs have you written? Do you know how many songs you've written?
Oh, about 50 or 60.
You've written more than that, Daddy.
Probably so. I'm just conservative estimate.
What do you like writing the most about?
Well, I love gospel music. I love writing about Jesus. I love writing about his unfailing determination and devotion to mankind. As long as we serve him as we should. And I think I have written some popular songs, like you would call pop songs, but I have never had any of them recorded because it seems like that old argument between being a popular artist and a gospel artist is still out there.
Right.
And I just haven't ever had the guts to
do it,
to try to put one out there.
So let me ask you a question. When you're talking about writing, and you wrote a Grammy-nominated song. It's been recorded. I mean, it's probably been recorded over 100 times now, like not just 70. I think it's been recorded at least 100 times. When you wrote it, I know you didn't write it with that in mind,
No.
right? But coming from a small town, like you're just this small town guy, and you have this Grammy-nominated song, and you never ever walked around like, that was so important. You just wrote the song because it was something that just inspired you, that came to your heart. I remember when we were children, you would get up in the middle of the night and something would hit you, and you would go sing it on your tape recorder in the bathroom so you wouldn't wake us up.
Yeah.
When you were writing that song, what was the inspiration behind it? I know it's Jesus, I Love Calling Your Name, but was there something that you were going through at the time that prompted you to write the song, or was it just like something that just played in your head and it just came to you?
It just played in my head and it came to me. You're always in the need of Jesus. you need Jesus to be on your side.
Right.
You always just before a problem happening, or just after it's happened.
You call on him.
You call on Jesus because there's no other power that is as great as Jesus to help you with your problem. I was trying to think of something I was going to say about writing that song. It'd been on my mind for a long time about when you hear certain phrases in church and you hear certain people say certain things. You say he won't he do it? People
won't it will.
things like that. But Jesus, every day your name is the same.
Yeah,
says so much about one's relationship with God.
Absolutely. I love it. So we've talked about politics. We've talked about your songwriting. Let's get into you being a teacher and a coach. You taught for 33 years. You taught in Columbus County, but you also taught in Whiteville City Schools System. And you were the teacher at Central Middle School.
I taught it in Bladen County.
And Bladen County.
But not Columbus.
Oh, not Columbus County. So it was Bladen County.
Yeah.
Okay. And you taught boys and girls. At the time when you were teaching in Bladen County, were the classes segregated or separate? Or were they were unison? They were integrated.
You mean the schools?
Yeah.
Schools were not integrated when I taught it at East Arcadia.
East Arcadia.
They were not integrated when I first taught it. They became integrated in what year? I can't think of the year.
We can't think of the year. But let me ask you a question. Teaching in
1969.
Teaching in a segregated school and teaching in an integrated school. What did you prefer?
I had no preference in terms of students that I taught because all of them have pretty much
learn.
If they live in the same geographical region, they have pretty much the same problems and the same challenges and the same lack of knowledge. A body of knowledge is just as foreign to a white student as it is to a black student in various geographical areas. And I always prided myself in being prepared to teach anybody, regardless of what race or ethnic group they would belong to. And so it was more of them getting used to me than me getting used to them. Because they had never. I've been told by some white students that they had never met a black man who had as much
intellect.
No, not intellect. Had as much how should I say it, bravado or boldness.
Being bold. There we go.
Boldness as I did, and that was true because I believe in my ability to teach anybody who did not know what I was there to teach.
So let's talk about some racial stuff that happened when I was at your school. So when I was in the sixth grade, a situation happened, and my dad. I tell this story because it speaks to his boldness, it speaks to his bravery, it speaks to his confidence. Got in the sixth grade. My dad was not my teacher. I was a part of the academically gifted class. Daddy taught, he didn't teach the academically gifted class. Not that he couldn't teach it, but he wasn't assigned to teach it.
I was usually assigned as low average because I asked for them.
You asked for them?
Yes.
You wanted to teach them?
Yes.
Got it. Okay. So that makes sense now. So I'm in this class, and this particular student, one of my classmates ended up being in your homeroom class.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were in a homeroom class, that was typically your social studies class, right?
Mm-hmm.
And her father was also a teacher at this middle school. He taught in the 8th grade. And so her mother and father, was it her mother or both her parents?
Her father approached me.
Her father approached my dad, and you tell the story, Daddy.
Well, the coach, who was a coach of our school, came to me and said that his wife did not want his daughter in my class because she had heard some terrible things about me from various other parents in the community. And I said, well, fine, No, well, what first happened, he went to the
principal.
Went to the principal, who happened to be African American at the time, and this complaining parent was white, and he went to the principal and said his daughter didn't want his daughter in my class anymore, and for him to reassign her to another class. So the principal came to me and said to me, you'd have to take this young lady off your roll because their parents don't want her in your class. I said, fine, if that's what you say, because you're the boss here. And I said, but send him to tell me that. I want to hear it come from his mouth, because we coached together, and I had never heard that come from his mouth before we were coaching. He never said it to me. And send him to tell me that what he wants for his daughter, and that is not to be in my class. So he came over later. I told him, I said, well, you don't want me to teach your daughter. Next year, my daughter will be in your
2 years from now.
2 years from now, my daughter will be taking a course that you were teaching. My daughter will not be in your class either. And I told the principal that. After I told him, I went and told the principal that since my daughter, his daughter was not going to be in my class, and my daughter cannot be in the teacher who was complaining's class.
And that's on period. as the young people say, that's on period. So no, when I got to the 8th grade, I was not in his class. And it was a class that he could only teach. He was the coach. He was the PE teacher. And I did not have PE in the 8th grade. Because my father felt like, if I'm not good enough to teach your daughter, you're not good enough to teach my daughter. And that was a lesson for me in bravery at that time, because it was like, not only did he as a father back my self-worth, but it also backed his own self-worth. Like, you can't just decide that you're going to make up this rule in the 6th grade and it not apply when my daughter gets in the 8th grade. So I think that was a really good example of my dad backing me as a human being, but also backing yourself as a human being.
Thank you.
He did that. Bam. Bam. That was a really good lesson, Dad.
Thank you.
What else can we talk about? We have so many things that we could talk about. You want to talk about family?
Yeah.
Let's talk about family. So people always talking about marriage goals, right? Hashtag marriage goals, couple goals, that thing. You and Mom have now been married, 58 years?
58 years.
58 years. What a marriage legacy. And I quote this all the time. I don't know if you remember this, but I asked you, because I've been married and divorced. And I said, Daddy, I know what it takes to get married. but what does it take to stay married? And your answer to me was
to make you
gotta be committed to the commitment.
that you made.
That's a bar. You gotta be committed to the commitment. So what does that really mean? For those people that don't know what making a commitment to the commitment, what does that really mean?
That means when you get married, at every juncture that there's problems or situations of problems to face, anger, whatever, distrust, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
You have to plow through it, and you don't look to leave the person as soon as adversity shows up.
Okay. Because you guys have gone through so much adversity. You've had sickness, you've had death of parents, you've had sickness of a child. You've had a lot of things that have gone on in your 58 years of marriage. What do you think was one of the greatest tests of your marriage?
Oh, the greatest tests. There have been quite a few great tests, but one of the greatest tests was when Gene was sick.
My brother got deathly ill when the same year I was born. He was in Duke Hospital.
Yes.
And you were here for the most part teaching.
Yeah.
And Mama
at the hospital
decided to leave her job and go stay at the hospital with my brother.
And fortunately, she was working for a superintendent who saw the need for extended absences
Mm-hmm.
because we were not even granted extended absences at that time in teaching. They are nowadays, but we
Right.
weren't granted extended absences. And he said, go up there and take care of your summons, Troy, and then we worry about replacing you with somebody until you get a chance to come by.
Who was that?
Jerry Pascal. I always loved him for that.
Oh, wow. Dr. Jerry Pascal, you guys, legendary superintendent. He was with Columbus County before he ended up being with Whiteville City. But he secured my mother's job while she went up to take care of my brother while he was in the hospital.
One great challenge that we had was when my wife had you, she lost a lot of blood and she needed blood. And she has a type A positive blood. And no blacks in this area had that kind of blood, that A positive. So most of the people who gave blood to my wife were whites, and I like to thank them for that. Again, I always do. But
Coach Carter was one of them.
Your coach.
Not my coach. He was Tracy's coach.
Yeah.
Well, he was my teacher. Yeah. And at the time, there was no blood banks. There was not the Red Cross blood banks where you could go and donate blood. So Daddy took it upon himself to go around to schools, churches, banks. Where else did you go?
Oh, barbershops, beauty parlors.
You went everywhere.
Yeah. Asking for the A positive blood.
And nobody had A positive blood?
A positive blood except white people.
And did that challenge you?
No, it didn't challenge me. I thought that I've never had a head-to-head continuous issue with white people. I've had run-ins with white people. I've had run-ins with black people. But I've never chosen to plant my foot down and say, this is where I'm going to be and this is where you're going to be and never the twain shall meet.
Right.
I wasn't ashamed to ask them for blood.
Because that was your wife.
That was my wife.
Yeah. Absolutely. I know that's right. You were going to get it regardless if you had to cut it out yourself.
Yeah. If I had to go 10,000 miles to get it.
I know that's right, Pop.
Your mom was a special woman. She's a special lady.
She is. So what do you think is the magic between the two of you guys?
Well, she laughs at my jokes. I always said if I found a woman who would laugh at my jokes,
she was it.
She was it, yeah. No, I did. I never said that. But she laughs at my jokes, and she is affectionate. She loves everybody. You can hardly find anything in her history that shows that she was against anybody.
Right. Very true.
And she loves people, and she loves public service, and she loves her husband and her children and her grandchildren and anybody else's grandchildren. She treats them the same way.
Yeah, she does. And that is just something that you admired about her.
Well, I admired. She was fine for one thing.
What? Come on, talk about it, Daddy.
That was the first attraction. but we were riding to. We started school to teach at the school at the same time. Our first year teaching was the same year, and at East Arcadia.
Mm-hmm.
Neither one of us had a car. And Miss Aldro, who was the principal of East Arcadia, lived in a town west of where I lived called Chadron.
Okay.
And he had this big Pontiac, and during that time, principals called them teachers, especially if you had extra skills,
mm-hmm.
such as a basketball coach,
mm-hmm.
a classroom teacher. But if you had skills like extra skills like a basketball coach or a choir director or whatever, your chances of getting hired was better. And I was a coach, and she was played piano and could teach a choir.
Mm-hmm.
And so he hired both of us and picked us up to take us to school because we didn't have a car. And as we got down, he picked up several other ladies. There were about 6 of us in the car. And when we got down to, she lived in East Arcadia, but it was still a few miles from the school. So he went by her house and picked her up too. And he was doing a service for us until we could do better for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
He was coddling us as he would do his own children. But when I got out to let her in,
being a gentleman,
my daddy had taught me to be, I bumped my head on the car door, and she fell out laughing. And I said, I know I'm going to hate this lady. But we ended up dating each other by the end of the school year. And the rest is history.
Mm-hmm. You got 4 kids, 2 grandkids, and 1 great-grandson. Acing. Right?
So thankful to the good Lord that he allowed us
to see this day. Yeah. That's amazing. What do you think, not only the magic, but so Heal Black Joy podcast now is called Heal Black Joy Presents Soul Food and War. Mm-hmm. Soul food meaning the yumminess of your healing journey, and then the war, the difficulty of your healing journey. When you think about your life, your 83 years of living, what was the war? If there was a war or a difficulty that had happened in the course of your lifetime, what would you say was the war that sticks out for you?
The war was clinging to my dignity as a man. And under the circumstances that I had to come up in, and that was the war. Living from day to day, questioning whether you were how should I say it? Questioning whether you were worth
your value as a man.
Yeah, your value as a man,
and as a black man in the Bible Belt South.
Always having to prove that in one way or another that you were as deserving as anybody else of American citizenship.
I said that to one of your colleagues over the course of COVID when the whole Trump thing was coming out, and she said something on social media, and I said to her, you robbed me of the tenderness of my father, because I felt like with her being racist and her working with you and you having to deal with that as a black man at school and not being able to really, you have to kind of deal with the fact that you have to have a job and you're paying your bills, and you can't go off on these races every single day, even though you might be working with them every single day. You probably came home very frustrated. You did come home very frustrated. Absolutely. I didn't understand that as a child, but I definitely understand that as an adult now.
I tried to keep that away from you all as a child.
Well, it's kind of hard to keep it away, Daddy, when you were frustrated, because I felt like I didn't think that you were mad with us per se, but I knew you were mad, and I didn't really know what your anger was about. And I let her have it because I felt like she robbed us of that. So I definitely can identify with you saying that when you say that the war of being knowing your worth and having to prove your value as a man in America.
Mhm.
So thank you for sharing that part.
Thank you.
Okay, so what is the yumminess, the soul food of your life?
Your children, seeing you grow up. Before you grow up, I never dream of my children as adults.
You said that.
I always dream of them as children because I hated to see them grow up.
You hate to see us grow up?
Yeah, because I always wanted to pet you and have you kisses and hugs and what have you, as we still do.
Right.
But it seemed a little more less real the older you get. But
Really?
it's the innocence of a child
Yeah, I can see that.
is what I guess keeps me dreaming about you as children rather than as adults.
That's funny that you dream about us as children.
Just still do
Right now.
right now.
Wow. Wow. If you had to say what your mantra is after all the things that you've experienced in your life, what would be your lifelong mantra? If you had to tell somebody about your life, what would that represent?
I've always tried to live according to the good book, to the Bible that says, "Love your neighbor as you love yourself." And I always use whatever ability I had to gain for myself and for those around me who might not have had the ability to advocate for themselves. I've always tried to be an advocate for someone who did not have the wherewithal, the knowledge, or the confidence to make it for themselves. I've always tried to help people that way. I always try to treat my neighbors how I would want to be treated. And I think that's been
Your mantra.
and it's been reciprocated in so many ways by so many great things happening to me and my family.
That's awesome. So I think this has been good, Daddy. What do you think?
I think it's been good too.
Is there anything else you want to talk about before we get off of here?
I just want to say that a lot of times we tend to feel that we have to be taught everything, but there's a lot of stuff that is caught. We said this other night as we talked about things being caught and taught. Substitute teachers were play day for most people in my class when I was coming along, when I was in about the fifth or sixth grade. And my daddy told me, he said, "Son, you can learn a lot from anybody. You can learn a lot from a man who's never even gone to school if you just open your ears and listen." And the good Lord has given you one mouth and two ears, so he wanted you to listen twice as much as he wanted you to run your mouth.
Woo! That's a bar.
But I learned two adages from a substitute teacher by the name of Lena Pierce. Substitute teacher, because I listened to my daddy's advice, and I could hear him saying that in my ear as I went to class. And the kids would start acting up because it was a substitute teacher.
Yeah.
And Mr. Pierce would tap on the desk with a ruler and say, "Could I have your attention a minute?" And just for a brief minute, they'd give her attention, and she would say, I had it right at the tip of my tongue, just a minute.
I can edit it.
It's surprising to know how much you have to know in order to find out how little you know. And she would quiet those guys down, and then she would say, "It is better to be silent and remain a fool than it's better to be silent and be thought a fool than to speak up and remove all doubt." I learned that from substitute teacher. And I always tell my kids that you can learn from anybody, and I always relay that experience to them.
If you could say who your biggest influence was, who would you say that is in life?
For a long time, it was my brother.
We haven't talked about your brother.
No, we haven't.
We got to talk about him before we get off.
Okay.
So tell me about your brother, Jim.
My brother was 2 years older than me, but he always loved me unconditionally.
Okay.
He even during our teenage years, he always looked out for me. He wouldn't let me do the things that he thought were detrimental to my health or to my body. Like he and his buddies used to slip around and smoke, but he wouldn't let me smoke. If he caught me smoking, he'd slap it out of my hand. And everybody wanted to smoke a cigarette to show how mature you were. And he would not let me smoke. He wouldn't let me do a whole lot of things. He wouldn't let me go to a lot of places. We used to have juke joints, if you know what I'm talking about.
A juke joint?
Yeah.
Okay.
A place where people sold corn liquor and danced until the wee hours of the morning.
Yeah.
And when I was out, I couldn't stay out in the morning, but as long as we could stay out, you'd always want to go to one of those places so you could prove yourself among the
cool kids.
The cool kids. And he wouldn't let me go to those places. He wouldn't let me do a lot of things that boys who thought they were men would do.
What's one of your favorite memories of him? When y'all, because didn't y'all like work together? When y'all were in
we worked together
in the summer.
Yeah, in the summer, but my brother was a ladies' man, and during that summer, he had a job as a waiter.
Y'all were in Atlantic City?
Yeah, and
okay.
I had a job pulling sheets from the laundry mat of a motel.
So let's set the story up. So during the summer, y'all were like what, college students? College students. They decided to go to Atlantic City because you, as a college student, could get a job. Right? So he got a job. He told you to come up to Atlantic City with him?
We went together.
Okay, y'all went together.
Yeah.
And we're talking, what time period are we talking?
70s.
Not the 70s.
No.
Got to be the 50s.
It was the 50s.
In the 50s.
In the 50s.
Okay. And y'all go to Atlantic City. I said Atlantic Station. Atlantic City, New Jersey. You're working, and now you go. Take over.
Well, we're working, and he makes certain that I save my money. And he still would not let me go to the nightclubs and what have you that he would go to. But then they had amateur night, and he told us my brother can sing better than anybody I've heard at amateur night. So I want to bring him tomorrow night and let him sing an amateur night. And Clarence Henry did a song called I can't think of the title of the song now, but it was a strong hit during the 50s.
Okay.
And he was a headliner, but they always had amateurs to sing. And I got a chance to sing, and I can't remember the song now. I'll think of it in a minute.
But you won.
I won. I won a little gold cup. So that was the beginning of, because I had a audition for the Arthur Smith show, not Arthur Smith show, some kind of show. I can't.
Up there?
No, when I was in New York, there was another opportunity that he made it possible for me to go and sing. Yeah.
And so he wouldn't let you hang out, but you could go and win the contest.
So he could float. He could tell folks that's my little brother. And I thought that was I lived to please him, so I thought that was a great thing. Yeah.
So what was his, like, if there was something that he would say to you to inspire you, what would that be?
He was always inspiration in doing his work. If he had to do a project, he would go all out and make his project. He was a valedictorian in his class, by the way, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. He would go all out of his way to make his project special.
Mm-hmm.
And he always told me that you add a little spice to it, makes it nicer. So you get your better grade too.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was.
And then he write his own recommendation to go to college.
Yep. And
he went to Morehouse. He graduated from Morehouse.
Yeah, because the principal was trying to make everything even. Jimmy had gotten all these offers from various places for scholarships, but he wanted to go to Morehouse, and the principal didn't help him go to Morehouse, nor did his advisor help him to prepared to go to Morehouse. So he wrote his own letter of not admission, a letter of application.
Yeah. And he used to drive for Dr. Benjamin E. Mays for us Atlanta folk.
Yeah, he was Jim believed in putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I got that from.
So I would say maybe you got some of the bravery and confidence from him.
I did.
Okay. All right.
Now, he was brave.
He was brave?
Oh, he was brave. He was really brave.
Give me an example of his bravery.
Well, he always liked to play with fire. We were out at the schoolhouse, and basketball goal at the schoolhouse was outside.
Wait a minute, hold up now. Don't incriminate yourself.
But I was out there too. and Jim was sitting over there waiting for his turn to play, and he took out a box of matches, and there was some straw growing up, and he threw the matches in the straw. He liked to see things like that, and it started burning, and the wind changed, and it started blowing toward the school building.
Oh God!
And he had us all out there stumping out fire.
How many people?
There was about 10 or 12 boys out there.
Stomping out the fire?
Yeah, stomping out the fire.
And you got in trouble?
Yeah, we got in trouble.
Who told it?
He told them he made a mistake and struck a match. Somebody, he could always talk his way out of anything too.
Okay.
I don't know how we got out of it, but we didn't get punished.
You didn't get punished?
No.
Okay. So we have talked about politics. We have talked about race relations. We've talked about you owning a paper, co-founding and owning a paper. We've talked about you as a city councilman, you being a community leader, you being a family man. We talked about your brother. We talked about a lot of things. If there was anything else you wanted to discuss, tell me.
No, I used to do a consult for a group I called consultation program I called A Matter of Life. And that was after I had prostate cancer. It was after I really got rid of prostate cancer by the help of the Almighty God.
Can I just set this up for a second? Okay. So Daddy is a prostate cancer survivor. But as you know, cancer runs in families, and Daddy is the only cancer survivor in our family, not just my immediate family, in my entire family. My dad's brother died from a form of cancer. My grandmother died from breast cancer. My grandmother's, some of her brothers and sisters died from different forms of cancers. And we've had cousins, my dad's cousins, to have passed early on from different forms of cancer. So he's the only cancer survivor in our family. So let's talk about it.
I found out that as I was going through this whole period of confusion about cancer, I always try to learn as much about anything as I possibly can. Mm-hmm. And I got a lot of literature on it and read up on it and realized that cancer was taking Black men out earlier than it was taking out anybody else, white or any other. And
prostate specifically?
Yes, and Asian men, prostate cancer. And Asian men didn't even show on the
in the statistics?
In statistics. Asian men were not even part of statistics. And I learned that Black men, and I learned out why, because most of them were afraid to take the exam
and go to the doctor.
Go to see the doctor.
So this is not, let's get into that, because Black people in general do not like going to the doctor. There's several reasons why we don't like going to the doctor. I understand it. You understand it. Because one, there's not a lot of representation for us. The health systems have now come out, whether it be mental health or just your physical health, where they've had to apologize because a lot of the research that's been done was not done on African Americans. And so a lot of the information that was given to us was based off of research done on other ethnicities. And there's some racial situations when it comes to how people or how doctors deal with African American patients.
It affects African American men earlier than it does white men.
And I also think too, Daddy, from a holistic standpoint, that you guys a lot of times don't have a voice. And cancer, when you think about my holistic doctor has a book that he recommended to me called Feelings Buried Alive Never Die.
Mm-hmm.
And every ailment that happens in your body, there is a feeling or an emotion that is tied to it. And cancer is anger. There's anger that's associated with cancer. So I'm pretty sure there is a connection of dots with cancer and anger and how it shows up and manifests itself in African American men.
It does. It does this way too. They don't want to take the exam. The simplest exam, the first exam that you take is where the doctor sticks his finger up your rectum. Yeah, and this attacks the manhood of most men, most black men. They feel that you're making a homosexual out of them,
right?
And so they don't want to take that exam. But the other thing is
well, we got to educate ourselves too.
Well, that's what I was doing with that program that I had.
Okay,
just going and meeting guys on Saturday morning and talking to them about how ridiculous it was that they didn't want to take that exam, and black men were dying at a higher rate than white men. So I tried to get that idea,
that notion out of their head.
That notion out of their heads, and be brave enough to withstand the indignity of having someone stick their finger up your rectum.
Mm. And so, with that being said, you did that. Then you like speak to people all over the not on the state about prostate cancer awareness, specifically in me. Well, prostate cancer specifically in black men.
Black men.
Yeah,
because we had high incidence of
prostate cancer. Yeah. So
at an earlier age, at age 45, they were saying 50 for white men.
Wow.
And they were saying 50 for all men, just like they do for a whole lot of things in health. It's less
for us. The age is younger.
No, the samples that they do,
the testing,
the
screening,
sampling. When I say sampling, I mean the
statistics
mm-hmm. that they do with white men.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't use white men. It's like what do you do when you're trying to find out about a disease? You put one group gives the disease to one group and the other one you give a placebo.
Oh, okay.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Well, that's what they weren't. They weren't using test surveys. They weren't using black men in test surveys.
Which is what I was just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
The information is very jaded because we weren't considered in the research. So the numbers or the statistics that were coming out were not based on data that was based on African Americans. Mm-hmm. So I think it's important. Black men, I know we talk about this. I do a lot of conversations around topics that affect black men, and that is definitely one that we talk about, which is our health, your health. Mm-hmm. So kudos to you for kicking cancer in the behind.
Yeah, since 1998.
1998, you've been cancer free. Hallelujah.
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 Thank you, Jesus.
Thank you, Jesus. So we've covered everything, I think.
I think so too.
I think it's a good time to wrap it up.
Okay.
If there's anything you want to say, I know every time I say that, you come up with something else to say. But if there's anything else you want to say, what would it be? I got a question for you.
What is it?
And I think I asked you this. If there was one thing that you have not accomplished in your 83 years of living, like if there was something on your bucket list that because you've done a lot, Danny. I mean, considering all the things that you've done, is there one thing that you wish you had done that you haven't done or you hadn't accomplished?
I wish I had taken advantage of my desire to photograph sunsets and set up a gallery showing the various sunsets and put them in magazines and what have you.
You like photography?
I did then. I still wish I had done that.
Really?
Yeah, I wish I had taken.
Why sunsets?
I know there's something beautiful about sunsets. It's different every night as I watched them over the years.
Mm-hmm.
It's different every evening.
And it's different in different places.
It's different in different places.
Yeah. I didn't know that about you.
I never shared it too much, because Mama would have tried to make it happen. And there were so many other things to do.
Right. She would have definitely tried to push it to make it happen.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you for being open to me interviewing you and also being vulnerable, just being open and honest about, you've lived your life, with full transparency. I feel like you don't really, you're not a person, it's not like people don't know how you feel, because you will tell people exactly how you feel, which I think is important. And I think that it's something that I definitely got from you, to want to help folk that are less fortunate than us. And I think that you have been such an example for not only myself, but specifically men in this area, Black men in this area. Like when we did your birthday party, you coached so many people. You coached women and men, but the men were like, just not even the kids that you coached, but the kids that you taught, the kids that went to the school that you didn't teach. They still all say something about you. They still have this respect for you because you represented something to them and for them. I think you might have been like their first example of a positive Black male figure for them. And, a lot of people don't have that positive male figure in their life. So I'm just so thankful and grateful that you're not only my positive male figure, but you're thousands of people's positive male figure.
Well, thank you for that. And I'm delighted to be here with you.
Are you?
Yeah, delighted you have your own podcast, and delighted about a lot of things. And how your greatest accomplishment is Lauren.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned.
The baby.
But you're still moving on and upward.
Onward and upward.
Onward and upward. And that's great.
All right. Well, Daddy, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So thank you guys for always tuning in to Heal Black Joy. This was wonderful. This was kind of enlightening. There were some things that I didn't even know. And I've been his daughter for 49 years. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you guys tuning in each and every Thursday night for my show. And we are going to say good night.
Good night.